This is Sporting Life.
Hi everyone, welcome to the latest Sporting Live Racing podcast. I'm Ben Linfoot. I'm joined by Ed Chamberlin, Graham Cunningham, David Johnson and Billy Nash to discuss all things racing this week. We're going to split the podcast into three parts. Part one is reflection, looking back on Newbury and some news items. Part two is reaction to the Grand National Weights release. And part three is prediction, looking ahead to this weekend's action at Ascot, Haydock and in Ireland. Welcome along, gents. Right then, we're going to start with Sergino. I think there's only one place to start, really. The big one that's out of the Cheltenham Festival, that was out of Newbury on Saturday. I'll come to you, Ed, for it. Sergino, it's a big blow for Nicky Henderson and for racing.
Yeah, it is, because I think that was arguably the race of the meeting. Him against Majborough in the Arkle. Such a shame. I feel so sorry for the owners. I spoke to Marie Donnelly earlier this week, but for Nicky Henderson, I mean, how much bad luck can a trainer in a yard have when you think of dear old Shishkin and everything else that's gone wrong over the last year or so? I just feel so desperately sorry for them. But obviously the news has taken a twist since the weekend, and now we've just got to hope the horse is all right, because it's got worse and worse. And we're being updated well on it, but it's obviously a very serious situation now. And just hope and pray that he'll come out the other side.
Yeah, it's that time of year, isn't it, GC, where these big guns can fall by the wayside?
Absolutely. Look how things went badly wrong for Nicky Henderson from about this time on in the run-up to last year's Cheltenham Festival. This winter, overall, things have gone like clockwork for him, and then here comes this blow. In the context of other things happening in the world at the moment, we need to keep it there, but it's a serious blow for him, the owners, for the meeting, and this is what we're here for in some ways. That Arkle now has quite an interesting shape from a betting point of view, because you're either heavily pro or happy to take on Majborough at 4-7. Lotus Sud we should have a word on in a moment, because I think he'll have split opinions with his Kingmaker performance. But it wouldn't surprise me if, as the dust begins to settle, if Nicky Henderson starts to look over Django Bai's books and start thinking, well, could you be the super sub in a race like that? Because Majborough looks a cracking prospect, but I just wonder what might happen if he gets taken on in a real test of accurate jumping. But no, it's a concern for all Sergino fans, because, and there aren't many like this, he did look to have the potential to be a genuine ace, didn't he?
Absolutely. We're going to just touch on the weekend's action now. That's a nice little segue, GC, because we will mention Lotus Sud winning the Kingmaker at Warwick. Now, I wrote a piece on the site on Saturday. I was fairly taken by Lotus Sud because of the way he attacked his fences, and I thought that his jumping in an Arkle could be a real asset. Now, I feel like I'm in the minority, so if anyone would just like to give an argument against Lotus Sud, fire away. No one? Or maybe I'm not in the minority.
Yeah, well, I don't know, Scoop. I think I was very taken with him for sort of 3/4 of the Kingmaker, and it was what he did from the second last home that wasn't very appealing. Now, it's entirely possible that they have left a little bit to work on with Cheltenham in mind, that he wasn't fully primed for this contest, which would be something, like Dan Skelton has done in the past. So I'm sure he will improve on it. But having looked really impressive until the home turn, the fact that he was all out, scrambling to beat Rubo at the finish, just took the gloss off the performance for me. And with the view to coming up the hill at Cheltenham, I don't know, I could see him travelling well at the head of affairs, jumping well. He'll have plenty of horses out of their comfort zone. But when it comes to the crunch from 2 out to the line, I'm not sure he's the one I'd want to be.
I don't think he'll be ridden ahead of affairs, though. I think it'll be totally different in the Arkle. I think he'll hold him up. Skelton will want that prize money desperately, and they'll ride him to be in the first two probably in the Arkle. I think they'll ride him differently. And his jumping's a major, major asset. I'd be in your camp, Scott.
Yeah, it was puzzling, wasn't it? That he looked all set to win by double digits.
Yeah.
Coming around the home turn. Then he needed 4 very, very serious cracks. So his jumping's a big asset. It's going to be very hard to keep him out of the frame. But we should add that if you look at form, if you look at ratings and time form and BHA, horses like Django By and Springwell Bay have achieved as much as Loda Sud, and they're much, much bigger prices. So I think that could be quite a lively anti-post market to watch in the next couple of weeks.
Just on the way that he finished his race, it's worth having a quick look at the finishing speed time form and taking it from the third last. So it's a 3.8 furlong running. And that finishing speed was 98.6%, and the overall time figure was bang up pretty much to the form figure of 153. So it could be that, given that finishing speed and the fact that they've gone hard, it could be that he's just sort of kicked on a little bit early, and it wasn't just a case of him being not quite fully fit. It could be that he just might have burnt a little bit of petrol earlier than ideal as well. So I certainly don't think we should be seeing him only as a length better than Roubaud. You think how well he was going and how far he was clear of that horse turning in. I think that's the reflection, and that's the sort of horse that we want to be thinking of in terms of how he might fare in the Arkle.
Yeah, it's 4 to 7.
Something similar at Sandown, though. Against Touch Me Not in the Henry VIII, he looked like he was going to win a long way, and he won 3.5 lengths or something at the end, but he wasn't going away from those horses at the finish at Sandown either. So I'd be slightly concerned about that. And that Touch Me Not form, Majborough well and truly put him in his place at Leopardstown. So, as GC said, I think on bare form as well, he does need to improve a bit.
4 to 7 Majborough and 4 to 1 Loda Sud. They're taking off 83% of the book already. So there is room for at least one double-digit horse to come and make a splash in that race.
Absolutely. Okay, let's reflect on Newbury now. It was the William Hill handicap hurdle, won by Nicky Henderson and Jayus, winning very easily, really, under Nico de Boinville. Ed, really good win, but no Cheltenham for her.
Well, no Cheltenham handicap for her, but I didn't really understand what all the fuss was about, because the rules were there. JP McManus said his piece about quarterfinals and semi-finals, so he wouldn't have a problem with it. Nicky Henderson's interview afterwards was just stating a fact. He wasn't complaining or anything about it. And that was the day for her, wasn't it? And she was very, very impressive off a very generous mark. It'd be interesting to see what they do with her. You'd love to see her running a mares or something like that, but it doesn't sound like that will be this year. But as far as the Cheltenham aspect of it, no handicap, I didn't really understand that, Scoop. I didn't see the problem.
I think there was some confusion because obviously for the race on Saturday, novices needed to have 4 runs to run in the race, but Jayus had only had 3 handicap hurdle runs. So I think that's where maybe some of the confusion lay in terms of going forward, what's happening at the festival. But my next question is it right, gents? Is it right that if the handicappers got it right, that they have to have 5 runs to run at the festival, or does it seem a little bit too much information for the handicapper?
Well, the key point here is, have those Cheltenham Festival handicaps been dominated by horses with 3 or 4 runs? I think, Billy, you've touched on this beforehand. There wouldn't have been many of those handicaps that have fallen into that category, would there? The Stateman County Hurdle is the classic example.
Stateman is the very obvious one, and I think the Nichols horse that won was the Coral Couple, Petit Swan, was one of the other few examples of horses that had less than 4 runs that went and won a Cheltenham handicap. So not a massive amount. And I think, Scoop, it's just starting to basically hit people recently that, all of a sudden these horses do need to have 4 and 5 runs to qualify for Cheltenham. It wasn't a big deal earlier on in the season, but now it's coming to the crunch and people are starting to realise, we might have messed up here and possibly we should have got another run into this or whatever. If we want to go to Cheltenham, it's beginning to hit home. But yeah, personally, I think it's ridiculous that you have one set of rules for Cheltenham and one set of rules for every other meeting of the year. But this is what they've come up with. So I suppose we have to give it a go this year anyway and see how it works out.
Okay, we will see. DJ, what did you make of Jello in the Denman Chase?
Yeah, I think he was perfectly good, wasn't he? In terms of stepping up in trip, obviously, certainly saw things out. If anything, looked almost as though he'd improved for the step up in trip, the way that he careered away in the closing stages. I guess, we were talking about the race last week, that it didn't look particularly strong, Denman Chase, and I think that was sort of borne out by the result. Jello, obviously, easily the least exposed horse in the race and got the job done. And he sets himself up for a Ryanair, doesn't he? But you look at the horses that he's going to be meeting in a race like that, and he's going to have to raise his game a fair bit further, I think.
It's a bit of a head scratcher, that the Windsor form, isn't it? When he was absolutely blasted out of the water.
That's Windsor, though, isn't it? So there'll be plenty of those at Windsor.
Yeah, agreed.
Can we trust that form? I don't know.
Yeah, no, you just draw a line through it, don't you? I mean, he's ridiculously well backed again, wasn't he? I think he was third favourite when we were previewing the race, and he's gone off a very, very strong favourite.
I said as they approached the crossfence and Charlie Deutsch was scrubbing him along, I was saying to my pundits, I told you they should have waited 2.5 miles at Ascot, going right-handed. And then he stayed on like you wouldn't believe. I mean, it was. Let's be honest, it wasn't a great race.
No. I think Saturday proved quite a good example of how certain horses didn't take to Windsor, Jello, and certain horses look better than they actually are. And I fell for Matata on the back of his runaway Windsor win. And although he ran respectably at the weekend, he probably didn't quite run to his Windsor level. So a bit of that Winter Millions form, certainly the Windsor bit, can be somewhat misleading, I think.
It was a Twist and Davis masterclass, wasn't it, GC, in the game spirit with the hair and the
up and down. Master Chewy. I always had a fondness for him, but that's a big one. I didn't read the quotes. Is he likely to go to Cheltenham, Master Chewy?
Ryanair, I think.
Ryanair. Himself and Jello, so they add depth to what was already going to be a fascinating Ryanair.
Yeah, the Ryanair shaping up, if they all go, to be a hell of a race. Billy, we'll stick with you.
Isn't the only one of the jumps Grade 1s at Cheltenham that hasn't got a hot favourite? I think are there 12 Grade 1s with no Turner's Novices Chase anymore? One's a bumper. I think there are 12 Grade 1s, 11 Grade 1s over jumps, and 10 of them have got favourites of either odds on even money or up to 7-4 or thereabouts.
Well, Farrell's pretty short in places, isn't he? For the Ryanair, is he short at 6-4? Yeah.
I think that's the key point, isn't it? If he does go there, he will be a very short price favourite. Yeah.
Okay, Billy, we'll stick with you. Was there anything in Ireland at Naas and Navan to take forward from?
Yeah, a couple of notable performances, Scoop. I suppose the one at Naas that really stood out to me anyway, and it's probably not much. It won't have much of an effect at Cheltenham, but a longer term one. The maiden hurdle at Naas on Saturday was won by a horse called Lovely Hurling, owned by JP McManus, trained by Colin Murphy, ridden by Mark Walsh. He's a horse that had shaped really well first time up at Fairyhouse last year. He'd won a bumper at Wexford by very, very easily back in May, a 2.5 mile bumper. This was his first start since, and he was really impressive. Now it was a reasonable maiden hurdle, but just the way he won it would suggest to me that he's going to go on to certainly hold his own at graded level before the season is out. But he's a 6-year-old already, so I would imagine chasing is very much on his agenda. But he's certainly one for the notebook. The other, I suppose, notable performance at Naas, with Cheltenham in mind, was Dino Blue beating Allegory Devassi in the Mayor's Chase. Both of them will turn up at Cheltenham. Dino Blue was giving weight away to Allegory Devassi and beat her over 2 miles. So they'll both go for the Mrs. Paddy Power with live chances. And at Navan on Sunday, similar kind of story. You had Better Days Ahead beat Stellar Story in the 10 up, but Stellar Story was giving him weight. He comes out as the better horse at the weights. To be honest, I was kind of half hoping Stellar Story might qualify him for the National Hunt Chase, because I think he's crying out for that sort of trip. But he's got a HRI mark of 148, and correct me if I'm wrong, that National Hunt Chase has a ceiling of 145 this year, so he'll skip that. He won't qualify for that. They're talking about running him in the Brown Advisory, but maybe the Irish National is the race for him later on in the season. And then you had the Mullins bumper horse, Copacabana, and Willie Mullins hasn't had a tremendous season up to now with his bumper horses, but this fella looked pretty good at Navan on Saturday, and you can be sure he'll be very prominent in the betting for Cheltenham after that performance. It looked a good race, and he won it well, so he's certainly one for the shortlist for Cheltenham, I would imagine.
I've been a big fan of Better Days Ahead with the Brown Advisory in mind, Billy, but I was a little bit underwhelmed by him.
Yeah, you'd have to be. Like I said, he was getting, I think, £5 off Stellar Story, and he was all out to beat him. I'm not absolutely convinced he's a Taurus Dare, Scoop. He won the Martin Pike last year, and I just think he might bump into a stronger stare over 3 miles. I think in time 2.5 might be his trip, but it'll be interesting to see what they do with him. But like I said, the second horse maybe should have beaten him even on Sunday, but certainly if they met again, I think I'd prefer to be with Stellar Story.
That Brown Advisory is a Grade 1 that's going to be quite an open market, and there's going to be a significant shake-up in the British pack this weekend because the Rendlesham Chase at Ascot, which we'll touch on a bit later on, that has, we don't have the jukebox man because he's injured, but in his absence, there are 4 or 5, maybe half a dozen horses in that Rendlesham Chase who could just sneak into the picture if they impress at the weekend.
It's an interesting division, that novice staying chase division. We will look at the Rendlesham later on. Just now, we're just going to reflect on some sad news. Joe Saumarez Smith, British Racing senior leader as chair of the BHA until only last month, died on Tuesday, aged just 53. Ed, if you can reflect on this.
This is so sad, Scoop. I mean, I'm just feel so desperately sad for his wife and his kids. And I hosted the weights reveal for the Grand National yesterday, and I came off stage and Robin Mounsey took me by the arm and told me the news. And honestly, I was just completely hit for 6 by it. I think I was due. It's happened so quickly. He was on the seating plan on Monday, and I was hopefully going to sit next to Joe, who was always such great company. He, real family man, passionate about the Arsenal, but driven by racing like you wouldn't believe. As chairman of the BHA, he told me, you're basically contracted to do 2 days a week, max. He was doing 7, Scoop, but 24/7 as well. That's how much he cared about it. Loved his punting, obviously, loved his sport. And for this to happen so quickly, I just was in a bit of shock yesterday. And I just feel so, so sad that it's happened so quickly for his family. That meant the world to him. And to think he's gone is just extraordinary, really. Just desperately, desperately sad.
Ed, I'm sure you can relate to this way better than most of us, but how I feel is irrelevant, but I feel a bit embarrassed and not trying to get to know and understand that fella better because I sort of chippied from the sidelines in print and on podcasting, what have you. But people like you, people I trust, Lee Mottershead, Tom Kerr from the Racing Post, if you read their tributes, they're not bad judges, those lads. And this was a very unusual character, and you've got to take lessons where you can find them. And I just feel a bit awkward about not understanding what this fellow was about. So 53 years of age with 2 kids, it's just awful.
Yeah, it's desperate. And listen, the chairman of any, be it a company, a body, a football club, whatever, there's only so much they can do. He could have all the best will in the world, but as chairman, there's only so much you can do. And he'd have loved to have done a lot more. He had racing absolutely at his heart, and yeah, it's such a blow. But this time, this is about his wife and his kids and his family and everything. Honestly, it just feels so, so cruel. It really does.
Yeah, really sad news. Joe Saumarez Smith passing away at the age of 53 this week. We've also got jockeys on the sidelines, Billy. Michael O'Sullivan in intensive care at Cork University Hospital after a terrible fall that saw racing abandoned at Thurles. What's the latest on him?
Well, I can't give you any news, Scoop. Like most people, I suppose I've been kind of waiting by my phone all week, waiting for updates, and to be honest, kind of not really wanting any updates, if you know what I mean. I'm, kind of operating on the basis that no news is good news here. He's been in intensive care since last Thursday. But yeah, really, really awful. It looked bad at the time, and it's turned out to be a terrible fall. A very promising jockey, but he had a really bright future in and out of the saddle. He's a college graduate, a very articulate guy, really well spoken, and we can just our thoughts and prayers are with his family and friends, and just hope for a good outcome. But also, I think it's important to keep his weighroom colleagues in mind here, because there was 5 horses involved in that incident, 5 jockeys involved in that incident at Thurles. 4 of them rode again over the weekend. I mean, it must be really hard to compartmentalise something like that. Think of Michael in intensive care all week, and these lads just have to get up and get on with it. So, like I said, just wishing him all the best in the world, and just hope for a good recovery. And please God, there will be.
Billy, you touched on something absolutely crucial there, that the people really close to people who are in extremis like this, it must hit them enormously hard. I watched Hong Kong racing, as I always do, on Sunday morning. There were 2 really scary, frightening incidents. 4 jockeys who I know really well all went down. One of them, Vincent Hall, spent the night in intensive care. His future looks cloudy now, and he's a person I got quite close to. He's a friend, and for loved ones, and colleagues, as you say, Billy, it must be now unbearable. I even saw Willie Mullins yesterday. He's rattling through his horses at the weights lunch, doing his media responsibilities and doing them well, while knowing that up and coming member of his team, because Michael has been doing really well for Willie in recent months, is really, really, really struggling. So you think of the person, obviously, number one, but all those closest to people like Joe Saumarez-Smith at the moment and to Michael O'Sullivan, it's a really unforgiving time.
Yeah, it really is. And our thoughts are with Michael O'Sullivan, certainly is hopefully wishing for good news with him, certainly. Okay, that is part 1 done and dusted. We are going into part 2 now. Reaction to the Grand National weight release on Tuesday. Ed, you were there. What were the main highlights?
Listen, as I say, when I came off stage, the whole thing felt utterly irrelevant, to be honest, when that Joe Saumarez-Smith news came through. But listen, the weights these days, it's all about the city of Liverpool, really. It's not that exciting, the unveiling of the weights. Martin Greenwood's very straight bat, does a great job, doesn't want any of the limelight, gets on with it. And there weren't many headlines from the weight scoop, to be honest, and sport goes in waves and so on. At the moment, the Grand National's very much Mullins and Elliott dominated. But the thing about it is, and you probably have to be there to witness it, is the importance of the event to Liverpool. The people of Liverpool love their event, and it's going through a real wave at the moment of where they're prouder of it, and their pride is extraordinary, really. And yesterday we had a young kid who won the piano competition on Channel 4, a young kid called Brad, who played the piano. Oh my God, I would sign him up in a heartbeat. And hopefully he'll play for us on Grand National Day. There was a young girl, again local, who read a poem. We had 24 years celebrating Alderhay. We had Neptune Collonges, who's done so much for those kids, who's going to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. So while the Grand National might not be making the headlines or attracting within racing, the intrigue that it used to, my God, it's in good shape in terms of Liverpool. And Thursday will be Liverpool Day, which will probably have a record crowd. Friday will be Ladies' Day. We know what that involves. And Saturday, obviously, Grand National Day. And Liverpool absolutely love it. It's their event. It's the people's race. And in that regard, it's in great shape.
Hey, Joe, if there's a betting story in the Grand National at the minute, it's probably JP McManus and his immense squad for the race, isn't it? I mean, I think he's got the top 3 in the market at this stage. What do you make of his team? Who's the JP pick as well?
Yeah, he does look to have a real strong hand, doesn't he? And I think the time form ratings are going to be headed at this stage by Iroko. Obviously, a lot can change between now and then with the weight set. Obviously, horses that come out and improve subsequently, they won't have to carry any penalties or be reassessed. But I think Iroko getting in off that mark of 152, anybody that obviously watched that race at Cheltenham, I'd be thinking, you know what, he can probably get a fair bit closer than what he did here off this mark of 152. So he looks interesting. But I mean, the horse that beat him at Aintree in the Grade 1 last year in the same silks, I know the way you're thinking, he really does look a potential Grand National winner to me. I just love the way that his form took off last year in the spring festivals and the way that he's just been campaigned so far this year. It does very much suggest that despite the fact that they're still to properly commit him for the race, it does look like there is a big plan for him this spring, and I think it probably will be the Grand National. Really taken with the way that he shaped in the Irish Gold Cup at Leopardstown. Was it last week or the week before? So, yeah, I think he looks to have real strong claims, and just got to wait to see that he's definitely confirmed. But I think even those
signs were encouraging. Signs were encouraging. I asked AP on stage yesterday who he'd ride, and he didn't hesitate. Actually, he said, "I am Maximus," and I said, "That's not the answer I wanted," because my anti-post punting, as you know, has been a disaster with my trade out of Lalamba, and my biggest bet I've had in ages was Sergino for the Arkle, as you know. But I have backed, along with Luke Harvey, and we said it on TV, I know the way you're thinking, before the Irish Gold Cup. And AP was encouraging. I think it's the plan, DJ. Reading between the lines, I think it's the plan, which is good news.
Yeah, looks very interesting.
It's got to be the plan, hasn't it? It has to be. GC, you seem a little bit underwhelmed by the Grand National these days. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, in a way, yeah. Again, I don't want to be, seen as the negative Norman today, but I adore the National. It's my local big race, and I will keep that. I'll keep that relationship as strong as I can. But this is important. Take all its points about Liverpool. That's true. But a sizable chunk of the media and racing fans have bought into the notion that fatality-free National, triumph. Fatality in the National, disaster. I don't want to dance on the head of that pin for weeks on end and for days after the race itself. So I will keep my own counsel by and large. I support the race. I still enjoy it. I don't think it's anything like as attractive a punting vehicle as it used to be, but that's of lesser importance than the welfare issue. But the sport, as you know, dances on the head of a pin with that race, and that's not sustainable in my book, at least.
Absolutely. And Billy, the Irish could win it again, couldn't they?
There's a smart chance.
I think only top 25 are trained by Irish trainers, but no, in serious note, I mean, the domination's there for all to see. But have you got any sort of early fancy on the radar?
Yeah, well, I suppose looking at the weights yesterday, the two that stood out to me were probably the two Gavin Cromwell horses. I know the way you're thinking, and Percival de Galois as well, who I think he's got enough a mark that is very, very reasonable. He's 153. He won the Paddy Power of 142 in Ireland, so I don't think that's he's been overburdened, and I think he is definitely in line for the race. There was another couple as well that I thought don't look badly handicapped, including I Am Maximus, I must say. I know he's going to have a mark of 167 is pretty significant, but it is only £8 higher than he won last year, than the one he won off last year, and I'm fairly certain he'd have won with another £8 on his back last year, so I wouldn't put anybody off him. I suppose, one horse that I've had in my mind for the race for a while is Manila Cocooner of Willie Munns's. He obviously won the Bet365 last year. I think he's very much been brought along with the race as his main target this year. He's got a mark of 157, £6 higher than he won the Bet365 off last year. Again, not insurmountable. I think they're building him up slowly this year. I'd assume he'll probably run the Bobby Joe at Fairyhouse in a couple of weeks' time, I'd imagine. That seems to be Willie's preferred option. And look, he's 20 to 1 at the moment. I wouldn't be rushing to back him at that price. I don't think he'd be much shorter on the day, but he certainly is one on my shortlist for the race.
Billy, that screeching sound in a week or two's time will be the sound of brakes coming off in the Bobby Joe, won't it?
Yeah, that tends to happen, all right. Lo and behold, they don't get a penalty for winning it.
Plenty of Grand National clues to come in the coming weeks, and we may as well start part 3 with the Grand National on the radar, because GC, we've got the Grand National trial at Haydock, your local gaff. Are you going this weekend?
Yeah, I'll be there. First point to make, it's been cold and cloudy, but I don't think this is going to be a really deep ground national trial. Yeah, man, we'll come to him in a moment. He won it, and won it really well on grueling ground 12 months ago. He's £11 higher, and they're just calling it good to soft at the moment, and I suspect that's where it will remain. But forgetting the national for a moment, this is just a good quality staying handicap in its own right, because you have lots of horses who are in really good form and a few who look capable of a bit better than they've shown thus far, Ben.
I was thinking that Venetia Williams very much holding the key at the moment with the Royal Pagaille in there, isn't he?
Yeah.
Obviously, he's down to carry 12 stone, but if he came out, the weights would end up going up over a stone, wouldn't it? And that'd bring, obviously, half of those that are currently out of the weights right into the handicap proper. So whatever your views are on this race at the moment, it pretty much depends on what Royal Pagaille, whether he turns up or not, doesn't it?
But if you don't run Royal Pagaille there, David, where do you run him? Because that's Haydock's the place he excels at, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, definitely. I think there was sort of talk from the owners suggesting that they might be aiming him at the National, weren't they? But even so, obviously, there's no reason why he couldn't come here and then take the National in as well. And like you say, obviously, this has always been his stomping ground, even if he disappointed in the Peter Marsh last time.
Rich Ritchie.
Last year's winner, Billy, £11 higher, probably not quite as deep a ground. Yeah, man. Is he still a strong player, do you think?
I think he'd have to be. I thought he ran okay in the Thyestes the last day. That was he was third in the Triton in his reappearance, fourth in the Thyestes. Yes, he's gone up in the weights, but he's. I would think coming back into form and the yard is flying. So if this has been the plan all along, I certainly wouldn't put anybody off him anyway. But as DJ said, it revolves around Royal Pagaille because I think there's only 5 horses in the weights proper as things stand. So if he does come out, it's going to be a whole different race.
Did you speak to Rich Ritchie in Liverpool?
He fell off the stage. It was very funny. He came on stage. I don't think he'd had a drink. He was in very good form, and he slipped, and it looked nasty for a minute. He went down the back, and I thought, oh no. I was thinking sort of national accident direct, where there's blame, there's a claim. But up he got, and he likened himself to Royal Pagaille. He handled it beautifully. He looked a little bit ruffled, but he says Royal Pagaille is just clumsy and things keep going wrong, but he's in a good place at the moment. It sounds like he'll run, and the Grand National is the aim. But one, those aren't Royal Pagaille's conditions that GC's described, and two, that was a shocker last time. So I don't think you could back him with any confidence, even if most of the field are out the handicap.
Well, yeah, it will be interesting to see if he turns up. And the Welsh National one too could end up there, couldn't they? Val Dancer and Jubilee Express. Looks a good race.
That race has been, if not polished, then certainly upheld twice in the last week or two. The Monbeg horse who won at Uttoxeter, and we've got the first two, haven't we? Val Dancer and Jubilee Express. What do you think, lads? This Sam Thomas yard intrigues me. I think he's had 51 runners all season. He treats his horses very sparingly, but he's got a really good strike rate. And Jubilee Express came out of the fog, charging down on the winner, Val Dancer, in the closing stages. So lightly raced horse over fences, suited by conditions. He is a little bit out of the weights, and it would help him if Royal Pagaille didn't run. But Sam Thomas should have a say in this race, I think.
It's a good card at Haydock, Scoop. Just a couple of others. Intrigued to see what they do with Lavender Hill Mob in the juvenile race, and where he might go. And then later on, GC, it'll be on Racing TV. That 350 Novices Hurdle, a horse I really like that ran at Windsor. I was there that day, of Lucinda Russell's, called Derry Hassan Paddy. Yeah. He beat the Skelton horse in a real good head-to-head. He would have hated Windsor. He's massive. She's described as a monster. And I listened to Rory Delaghi on a rival podcast the other day, tipping him up for Cheltenham, because I like him as well. So I made a beeline for Lucinda Russell yesterday and asked her. And he runs with you at Haydock on Saturday. She absolutely loves him. Yeah. And Cheltenham would very much be the aim for him. And
I don't know exactly how he ran at Windsor, because I had him nicely laid on the basis
that track.
That the track wouldn't suit him. And he was never going to win until he won. He would not lie down. So he looks
He looks an Albert Bartlett type, doesn't he?
Yeah, he looks a bright prospect. I think short and medium term, because he's a unit. So, yeah, and we've got the Rendlesham Hurdle, Grade 2, 3 miles, Botox Haas. Nemean Lion, a favourite of mine. Maybe he'll run somewhere else. I don't know whether he's got other options. But no, Ascot and Haydock both have a lot of depth this weekend. So if you forget your anti-post book for a few minutes, there are probably a few decent bets to be wheeled out this weekend, I think.
So I'm going to wheel out a point for Derry Hassan Paddy for the Albert Bartlett, I think. That's the target. Mm.
Just mentioning Nemean Lion, he's also entered in the Kingwell at Wincanton, which looks a really interesting race, actually. Burdett Road obviously trying to polish his champion hurdle claims there, but I don't think it's necessarily quite as straightforward for him there as what the initial betting might suggest. I think he's around an even money chance, but he might come up against Golden Ace there, who he's got to give £8 to. And she's had a couple of runs this season over 2.5. And I think coming back to 2 miles will very much be in her favour. So the Kingwell, it's a while since it's had a strong impact on a champion hurdle, but it looks like it could be a really interesting race this weekend.
Didn't the Main Line win it last year? In my memory playing tricks on me. I think he probably did, and I think he's more likely to go to Wincanton than he is to Haydock myself. He's a
He
short
did,
price.
yeah. He's not jocked up at either, but he also does have a stayers hurdle entry, doesn't he? So they might at one stage want to test the water to see whether that's a viable option for him or not.
Well, let's talk about Ascot. Grade 1 action this weekend, Betfair Ascot Chase. Last year's winner, Peak Dory, against L'Empresse again, potentially, and interesting horse, Corbett's Cross, thrown in there by Emmett Mullins. Ed, are you at Ascot this weekend?
I am, though I prefer the racing, as I say, at Haydock Park, if I'm brutally honest. This, to me, looks a little bit of a repeat of last year, Pic D'Orhy against L'Empresse and Corbett's Cross. It's a curious one, this. If he was to come here, you'd think deep ground over a trip, wouldn't you, Billy? Not this trip round Ascot, which is sharp. You always think Ascot's a massive expanse. It's not. It's very, very sharp, that inner chase track.
Yeah, I thought 3 miles at Kempton was too sharp. It was too sharp for Corbett's Cross, so 2-5 around Ascot certainly isn't going to suit him. But if he does run, it's very much a means to an end. They just want to get a race into him before Cheltenham, I think. I was surprised to see him in the entries, but if he does turn up, I certainly couldn't be fancying him. Like Ed said, it does look like a repeat of last year, Pic D'Orhy and L'Empresse. And to be honest, much as I like L'Empresse, I don't think 2-5 around Ascot is his cup of tea either. So it looks like Pic D'Orhy's race to lose to me again, Scoop.
Shall I give you my stat of the day?
What do you say?
I need to double check this, but I think I'm right in saying that Pic D'Orhy's winning this race 12 months ago was the last time that Paul Nicholls won a Grade 1 race.
Wow.
Yeah, I want to double check that. I just was looking at it before we came on today, but I think that's true. And I agree with go back if you fancy, and I'm a big L'Empresse fan, but if you fancy him at a short price this weekend, go back to last year's race when Pic D'Orhy hogging the inside line, jumping hard, straight, dead straight and aggressively. He just jumped his ears off because L'Empresse can't help himself adjusting left round Ascot. And whatever the prices are now and 2 minutes before the off, when Pic D'Orhy jumps out in front and gets in that rhythm and L'Empresse is adjusting to the left, those prices will change quick sticks, I think.
Good shout.
It's hard not to see Pic D'Orhy very much having the run of this, isn't it? But I mean, going back to Corbett's Cross, we're all saying that we don't fancy him, but somebody clearly does, because he was the only one that they wanted to know in the early markets, wasn't he? I think he opened around 5-1, and I don't think he's any bigger than 9-4 now. So it certainly suggests he's likely to turn up, even if probably doesn't look like he's going to have his optimum conditions.
Your stat is correct, GC. Paul Nicholls, 0 from 18 in Grade 1 since Pic D'Orhy won last year. He's had a couple of seconds with Ginny's Destiny, and that's the closest he's got.
Put it on the poll, lads.
No, it'll be on ITV. Don't worry
Put it
about
on the poll. Is there anything better than seeing Paul Nicholls silence the doubters? He had a pretty rough weekend last time around. It's supposed to be a bad season. He's still, clear second in the Trainers' Championship and has won lots of big races. But Saturday is a significant day because he's on the Grade 1 trail with Pic D'Orhy again. And that filly, Just a Rose, very lightly raced, absolutely bolted up at Taunton. I think she's penciled in for the Mares Novices Hurdle at the Cheltenham Festival. And if that's the case, she needs to polish her reputation a bit more at Ascot this weekend.
Maybe he'll win the Nash. His eyes lit up with Can Do Kid. He absolutely loves him. Loves him for the race.
He could blow Dan out of the water, couldn't he?
Just the fact that he's only had 18 runners. And just the fact that he's only had 18 runners in Grade 1s over the course of 12 months, that suggests to you how much lack of firepower there is in that yard at that kind of level these days.
Yeah, absolutely. But a big chance with Pic D'Orhy in the Betfair Ascot Chase this weekend. I'm really looking forward to the Ascot handicaps. They're
Go on, who have you found?
Well, no one particularly, Ed, but just the Swinley handicap chase looks a potential cracker, doesn't it? Lots of Ascot specialists in there, lots of Victorino, etc. And then the hurdle looks really good as well. GC, you wanted to mention the Reynoldstown. I think we should at this stage. A couple of the Nicky Henderson staying novice chasers. Well, we think staying at this stage in there in Ginkgo Blue and Highland. This could be an informative contest.
Well, we've got quite a lot of horses who've, hit marks in the mid to high 140s. Whatever wins this is going to have to run nicely into the 150s, and that would give them Brown advisory potential, because without Ballyburn, yes, I like Dancing City, and without the Jukebox Man, the bar is not at a massively high level. So I don't know which one of Highland and Ginkgo Blue Nicky Henderson will run. De Boinville's jocked up on both at the moment, but they both have plenty to recommend them. Highland gave the Jukebox Man a decent race on Boxing Day. Ginkgo Blue has looked really good in a couple of chase starts. I think Butch, this Ollie Murphy horse, who's very promising, I think he might go to Carlisle early next week. But if you look further down, we've got Lowry's Bar, Peaky Boy, the Changey Man, who's a maiden, and White Rhino. So it's a good punting race, this. Peaky Boy, ex-Henderson, now with the O'Neills after changing hands privately. So I'm not saying there's a superstar in the race, but whatever wins it, you would think is going to be a place contender for the old Brown advisory.
Well, Lowry's Bar's an interesting horse, isn't he? He was obviously beaten
really well overall, didn't he?
Yeah, beaten by Ginkgo Blue at Windsor again. We're talking about Windsor, that Hampton novices chase, but he's a nice stay novice chaser for the Philip Hobbs and Johnson White Yard. DJ, have you got any thoughts on this?
Not particularly. One thing that I did notice quite interesting, Highland, he's got a national entry, which is a very unlike Nicky Henderson kind of entry for, obviously a novice that obviously finished second in the Grade 1 at Kempton. I think he's in there off about 147, I think his mark could be in the national. So I thought he was potentially interesting if he did go down that route. But
jumps really well.
Yeah,
really only 50 to 1 for the national at the moment. Only had 5 chases so far, but that's it's not a big barrier anymore at entry, is it?
No. So yeah, an interesting race.
I'll come to you all at the end if you've got any weekend fancies, but just have a think about that while I ask Billy what's going on in Ireland this weekend. Billy, it's Gowran Park Red Mills Day, isn't it?
Is Gowran Park Red Mills Day, yeah. Always a good day out. Red Mills, I think, are sponsoring the gate again this year, so I don't know if it's free entry to everybody, but there were certainly free tickets available for people who were able to snap them up. 2 very interesting races. Obviously, we're not entirely sure what's going to run in both of them. For example, the Red Mills Hurdle, Beacon Edge could turn up there, but he's also, I see, in the Rendlesham at Haydock, so he's got options. But Willie Mullins, you would imagine, will probably dominate both races. He's got a couple of very interesting runners in both. In the hurdle, he runs a horse called Kits Bouhel for the Donnellys, who, an ex-French horse, beat Colonel Mustard at Ferios, I think it was, on his Irish debut. He's a horse, it's hard to know where he's going to fit in the greater scheme of things, but this sort of level, he should be well up to winning races at this level. He might come up against Sir Gerhard, who bolted up in a charity race at Punchestown last week or the week before, so he's obviously in decent heart. And there's also another intriguing Mullins horse in it called Histoire de, who won a 4-year-old contest in France the last time he was seen. He's now 8. He's owned by JP McManus, so he must be showing something at home to say they've persevered with him for this long, but who knows how good or otherwise he is anyway. We might get to see him on Saturday. And the Red Mills Chase, again, Mullins has the likes of St. Sam, Blood Destiny, Blue Lords, they're all in their classic getaway. Phil Dore will be trying to pick up some more of that ridiculous amount of money that they paid for him last year. And you've journeyed with me in Pinkerton. It's an interesting race, but they're definitely second rater, so it's not going to have any bearing on the Cheltenham Festival.
Yeah, you'd have thought if Corbett's Cross was going to have a 2.5 mile sharpening up exercise, he might have gone there, Billy.
Well, he probably gets off the ground anyway, for starters, and it's only down the road. So, yes, it would have been the logical one, but maybe Emmett knows more than we do, Scoop.
Well, yeah, it's certainly looking that way, isn't it? Okay, we're going to finish off with a couple of weekend fancies. Who wants to go first?
I could start. It's not a fancy as such, but a horse I'm looking forward to seeing back in action is Donald McCain, Maximilian. He looked a really, really bright prospect when he was Second in that Grade 1 novice at Aintree, the 3 mile race behind Apple Away. Iroko was behind him, Stay Away Faye. Looks good form. He's obviously had problems. He's a long time off the track. He's got 2 entries, actually, Rendlesham and a Potemps qualifier. But I think Donald will be delighted to get that horse back, and he's potentially the stable star if he's still healthy.
I've got a couple, Scoop.
Ned, who do you
got-
fancy?
Derry Hassan Paddy up with GC at Haydock in that Albert Bartlett trial. He'll shorten up, hopefully, for the Albert Bartlett after that. And we haven't mentioned the Kingwell yet at Wincanton, which comes early on Saturday. But I'm going to go with Jeremy Scott's mare. I think she'll beat Burdett Road, actually. I'd be quite confident of it as well. I think the betting might be wrong with Burdett Road at even money and her at 2-1. I just think everything's perfect for her, Scoop. We've talked about her a lot on this pod over 2.5 miles. I'd love to have seen her run in the Betfair hurdle.
Me too.
They should have probably run into one with Joy Hers. It would have been a 1-2 for the mares, though, I think, if she had. But the stable have come back into form. The reports about her are good, and a speed test round Wincanton should be right up her street. She can sit on Burdett Road's tail and pick him off in the straight. I like Golden Ace on Saturday, I really do.
Any podcast points on Golden Ace, or are you just sticking with the Albert Bartlett anti-post?
No, we can get some points out. We haven't had points out. Well, I haven't for ages. So let's go 2-point win Golden Ace and a 1 point each way. Derry, Hassan, Paddy, all in those, Scoop. No, don't worry about non-running, no bet. I believe in Lucinda. They're going to go for the Albert Bartlett. Rory Delagi will be delighted to hear that too.
We're taking the big odds. I like it. Okay, DJ, anything this weekend finally?
Nothing as yet. Wait and see how that Haydock race is going to look, whether Royal Pagage shows up or not, I think.
I thought you were going to pull one out on the all-weather there.
Disappointed.
Okay.
I've got one
hear
for
that,
you,
Billy,
Scoop.
sorry.
Just one to keep an eye on this weekend. Not necessarily a betting proposition this weekend, but longer term, I'm really interested in a horse of Gordon Elliott's called What's Up, Darling. He's had 3 runs over fences, Scoop. He needs 1 more to qualify for the Cheltenham handicap. He was 5th or 6th in the Martin Pipe last year and ran really well in that good handicap hurdle at Aintree that Katira won. I think he was 4th and he wasn't beaten far. But he's had 3 runs over fences. His last 2 runs have been over 2 miles. He was third at Thurles last week over a wholly inadequate 2 miles. He's got 2 entries this weekend. He's in over 2.5 at Gordon and 2.6 at Punchestown. He'll definitely stay 3 miles, I think, this horse. I wouldn't be surprised if he turns up in a Kimmuir, but he needs to have another run before he qualifies for Cheltenham. So keep an eye on What's Up, Darling this weekend and see how he gets on.
Should run on Valentine's Day, that one.
Boom.
We're
Good
good
on
on
it.
Put in a good word for a horse we didn't mention from last weekend. It sort of flew slightly under the radar. He finished 3rd in a good handicap hurdle at Newbury. 80 Calais for Rebecca Curtis and Sean Bowen. I didn't expect him to run so well, but he ran very close to his new Chase handicap mark, 135, 136 over hurdles, which suggests to me that he's probably going to be a bit better again when he goes for the National Hunt Chase. So a bit early to be dabbling in markets like that, but he looks a pretty bright prospect. And Rebecca won that race many moons ago with a mighty T for 3. Remember him?
Yeah. He was the Soccer
that's
AM horse, wasn't he, for a while?
Yes.
Who have you got, Scoop? Stick one in for the Yankee.
I'm going to stick with Lowry's Bar in the Reynoldstown. I think getting £5 from whichever Nicky Henderson horse turns up could be vital in the final analysis. I really like his jumping. I think he'll be suited by Ascot. So, Lowry's Bar for the Philip Hobbs team for me.
But you doing a national piece, Ben, or are you hanging fire on that?
I'm hanging fire on the National GC. We've had plenty out on Sporting Life pages. Matt Brocklebank's put up a 100 to 1 shot in Twig for the Ben Pauline yard, who might just sneak in. I think he's number 54 on the list at the minute, but made a good case for him. But yeah, plenty of opinion already out there. Nobody wants my thoughts on that as well.
Can I get your thoughts on something on my Instagram story, Scoop? Why is Dave Ord and Daryl Jacob popped up on an Instagram story at a golf club? What's going on there?
Dave, I mean, he's got out of another podcast, hasn't he? And the excuse this week is he's interviewing Daryl Jacob for a career reflections video at a golf simulator somewhere in West Yorkshire. He's got his 7-iron in hand and they're chewing over lots of things. I've absolutely no idea
It's
what.
great.
Put it on the poll. Is Daryl Jacob milking it? Don't tell you more than Anton Deck, isn't he?
Is Dave Ord milking it?
Yeah, very good point, Billy. Very good point. He might be back next week to host this podcast. Who knows? But you lot will be back anyway, and you'll be talking about all things Ascot and Haydock that happened this weekend, and you'll be looking forward to
Kempton.
The Kempton, that's it. The Ladbrokes Trophy, I think it is now, Ed, isn't it? And the Ida Chase and all that stuff next weekend.
Bobby
Joe,
Joe, don't forget the Bobby Joe.
So
The Dave Ord, the Adonis.
the Dave Ord is out again. Okay, thank you. Thanks, gents. Thanks for listening. We'll be back next week.
Download the Sporting Life app for the best racing coverage, including live racing blogs, fast results, stable tours, trainer and jockey interviews, expert opinion, and tips.